Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Alhamdulillah wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man walah. So we're going to continue our discussion on the origin of the Big Bang. It's going to be getting a little bit more technical tonight, right? Because we're going to go into the world of physics, inshallah. But towards that end, we will also, inshallah, discover the greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the wonderness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's creation, right? Which uh, scientists right now have discovered to be stranger than a fiction itself, something that baffles the mind. Okay, and with that, we're going to proceed on to the theory that was initially, or that, yeah, not initially, that was rejected by Albert Einstein, right? That genius of a man, right? Even with his gift in maths and also in physics, he cannot accept the modern theory of this, what do you call it, the modern physical theory, which is called quantum theory. So we're going to go into quantum theory tonight, inshallah. And knowing about this quantum theory is very important, right, to understand the origin of the Big Bang itself, and also how it ties in with our understanding of the creation of the universe according to Al Quran. Okay, so you have to, have to concentrate a little bit more lah tonight, okay, because I'm going to get a little bit technical, hopefully not so technical lah, inshallah. But if you have any questions, right, with regards to what I will share tonight, just drop in those questions on the chat box, and I will regularly look at the chat box, right, throughout my presentation tonight. If there are things that are not quite clear for some of you, I will reverse a little bit, I will go back a little bit, and I will try to explain further. It might be that my explanation will not be clear to some of you. So if you need more clarification, or you need me to explain again, feel free to drop your questions into the chat box. Okay. Now we have covered last week on the time scale, right? I have discussed quite a lot on what do you call it, as the fine slices of time, which we must really understand. We live in a, what do you call it, large time frame, right? We cannot really, our brain really cannot work on a smaller than 1 second and then a second. Today's discussion, right, in the what do you call it, uh, our WhatsApp group today, I discussed about the speeding up of Earth rotation on 20th of July 2020, right? But it speeded up by just less than 1 second. In fact, it's 1/100th of a second, right? It is 1 microsecond, right? 1.something microsecond, which is something that we cannot really feel it, observe it, right? Because we live in a large time span, right? Not in a microsecond time frame, but in seconds time frame and above, seconds and minutes and hours and so forth. But if you go to below 1 second, a microsecond, that is something that is beyond our observation, right? So does not really concern our day-to-day life, right? But if you live, right, like those subatomic particles that live in a microseconds, right, they appear in, let's say, 0.1 second, and then after that disappear in 0.2 seconds, so their lifetime is just 0.001 second. Then of course, right, that difference is a lifetime for them, but for us is something like appearing and disappearing at the same time. So we have covered this. I'm not going to cover again most of it, but we're going to again revisit this very, very small time frame when we move on towards the beginning of time, or the beginning of our universe, which is the Big Bang itself. I also covered this, right? We talk about what do you call it, the agreed model of the Big Bang, which almost all scientists agreed upon. This is actually what happened from their calculations, from their models, right? From what they observed from the experiments. So they said that, well, the first star started to shine about 800,000 years ago. Then before that, 300,000 years ago, right? The first, what do you call it, electrons started to attach to hydrogen. So it forms what? It forms an atom, a proper atom, right? Because atom consists of the proton, neutron at the nucleus and the electron surrounding it. So before 300,000 years, there were no electrons attracted to the nucleus itself. There exists only nucleus, atomic nucleus, which consists of what? Which consists of just neutrons and also protons. Right, that is 0.2 second. Going inching a little bit further and further, sorry, closer and closer towards the Big Bang, then you approach the minus 100 second, which is 10 to the power of minus 2, right? At minus 100 second, uh, what do you call it, as neutrinos bombarded neutrons and produced electrons and protons. So the first production of electrons and protons took place in 0.2 seconds. Not at 0 seconds, right? But it is, I will say that, let's put it this way, between 1 second and 0 second, right? It is, if you slice, like I say, if you slice the time in between them 100 times, then that occurs on the first slice, right? The production of the first electron and proton. Then after that, if you slice between 0 second and 1 second, you slice it, right? 100 million times, 100 million slices of time. The first slice was the time when leptons and quarks first appeared. Now, leptons is electron, right? And also, what do you call it? Quarks, right? They are the ingredients of protons. Then, if you slice between 0 and 1 second, you slice it 10 billion times, right? You slice 10 billion times. Then the first slice after 0 second, the first slice, which is 10 to the power of minus 10, that is the time when the particles of energy, they call it the bosons, right, first appeared. Photon, boson, and gluon appeared. So you see, subhanallah, right? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created all these things, the constituents of this material universe, right, at a very, very early part of this universe creation, which is 10 to the power of minus 10 second. Which is what? 0 to 10, 0, 1, 0 to 1 second, the first 0 second, the first second, you divide to 10 billion slices. So the first slice, that is a very, very narrow slice of time, right? So very, very early on, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created all these ingredients for atoms, right? And all the ingredients for the energy interaction of this universe, right? The light that we see, you can see me, I can see you. Because why? Because the photons that being emitted, the particle of light, which is called photons, being emitted from the screen to your eyes, right? But this particle photon, this particular particle, it was created very, very early on, right? So particles were created and then they were destroyed and then they were created again. So particles do not enjoy a lifelong time, right? They were created to a certain period of time, then they were destroyed, or they have to be destroyed, and then new particles will be created from the energy, right? That Allah SWT supplied in this universe. So number of particles, which is also number of atoms in this universe, right? Uh, very, very early on, it was not fixed. But then as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created this universe as progress, right? From 0.0000000 to what 10 billion zeros second, right? 0.00001 second with 10 billion zeros in between to what is currently right now, the number of atoms, right, fluctuates, right? It can increase, it can decrease. It depends on whether you destroy the atom or you don't destroy the atom. But one thing that Allah has supplied to this universe from the very, very start of the creation of this universe, which is the Big Bang. One thing that is fixed that cannot be changed until the end of this universe, which we believe to be a big crunch where everything will be destroyed back, because that's what Allah says in the Quran. Okay. Now, that thing that cannot be changed or is fixed, the currency is fixed, the supply is fixed, that is called energy. Now, energy in this universe cannot be produced, cannot be destroyed. Means you cannot create new energy. You cannot create new energy. Whatever you think that you have created a new energy, right? Those energy actually came from an earlier form of energy. So energy can change in its format, but the total energy of this universe is fixed. It cannot be increased, it cannot be decreased. So Allah has supplied a limited amount of energy for this universe, right? But they said, look, we can generate electricity, the sun is producing energy. Yeah, but the sun is producing energy from where? From nuclear fusion. Now, nuclear fusion, where you fuse together the atom, right? You have fused together hydrogen to produce helium, and helium and hydrogen to produce lithium, and so forth and so forth as you move up the periodic table ladder. This fusion of atoms, that is the one that creates energy. But that energy that came from the fusion of atoms, which is called nuclear explosion, that energy came from the particle itself. So that particle actually, right, that mass of particle actually in itself contains tremendous amount of energy. Tremendous amount of energy. So if you have to understand this. And the scientists that realize this phenomena, right, is the one who very famous scientist we all know. His name is Einstein, Albert Einstein, and he formulated that very famous equation. If you don't know any other equations, that is surely you have heard this equation. The Einstein's equation is equals to mc squared. E is equal to MC. We're going to visit this equation again after this, right? So is E is equal to MC squared is a very important equation. That is the core of all nuclear explosion, all nuclear atoms, and sorry, not nuclear bombs, atomic bombs, they all being derived from that basic principle, E is equal to MC squared. Now, what is actually that formula? It actually tells us that energy contains, no, sorry, matter, which is mass, particles, subatomic particles, contain in it tremendous amount of energy. So you just need a very small amount of atoms, right? Uranium and other uranium isotope. You combine them together, then you have tremendous amount of energy that is being released, will be released from that fusion, and that amount of energy is what we can see or we call as nuclear explosion. It can destroy the whole of Singapore. Right? If not the whole of Singapore, three-quarters of Singapore gone with just one nuclear explosion. So imagine, right? This is what Allah SWT has created in this universe. The energy is fixed. You can say that the currency for this universe is fixed. You cannot increase, you cannot decrease it, but you can hide it. You can hide the currency. You can hide the energy. Where can you hide it? Allah SWT hid it and continue to hid it in mass of particles, subatomic particles. So atoms actually contain tremendous amount of energy only if you can extract it. If you can extract that energy, and people are now trying to extract the energy from atoms by having a nuclear fission or nuclear fusion technology, right? Whether they generate electricity using nuclear fusion, whether you fuse it or you fizz it or you peel the atoms apart, right? You still produce tremendous amount of energy. There were designs from 1990s. I still remember, right, from magazines like Popular Mechanics and so forth, right? They were designs already designed by Japanese researchers, a portable battery which consists of nuclear fission, nuclear fusion, where they fuse together atoms and produce heat and energy. Heat is energy, and this heat converted to electricity and can supply, right, that household indefinitely for a very, very, very long time. So imagine if you have just that one battery, you don't need to have all this supply of electricity from government or from anywhere. Just put that battery there, then you have unlimited amount of energy, so-called unlimited amount. You can use it until you die, whatever you want to put. You want to put 10 air cons there, you want to reduce the temperature of your house to minus 10 degrees, that battery can still supply that energy. Imagine, it's free. Yeah, only if you can extract the energy from atoms. So they managed, right? And it's a portable. When I say portable, it means that it doesn't mean you can put inside your pocket. But portable means that you can fit it inside your room. It is as big as half a room. The battery is as big as half a room. But okay lah, if you have free supply of energy, half a room of battery should be okay, right? But sadly, the Japanese researchers, they do not pursue this idea further because technology is still not there to, what they call it, insulate, to make that battery safe from human. So that battery, because it's nuclear, right, it produce radiation, and there is a risk of nuclear explosion. Imagine if that battery is being produced and every single unit in a HDB flat purchase that battery, then if three of the batteries malfunction, then they have a nuclear explosion in that flat, right? Then the whole flat, not just the flat, the whole neighborhood, in fact, the whole town and city will be gone in a nuclear explosion. So it's not really safe. So that's why it's not being explored further lah. But it's a very interesting idea, right? If you can just extract energy from atoms, but we can't. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala hid it. Allah hid all this energy in atoms, and we still cannot extract it. Even though we know that the energy is there, we cannot extract it. As much as we know, in one strike of lightning, it can produce electricity that's enough to supply a big town for almost a year, or even half a year, right? For example, Singapore is one of the countries that has a lot of lightning strikes, one of the highest number of lightning strikes in the world. Singapore, because it's tropical country. If we can just extract 10% of all those lightnings that strike us, extract it, take the energy, take the electricity, store it, then you don't need all these generators. You can have unlimited amount of energy. It's free because lightning will always strike us, right, in Singapore. If you can just extract those electricity, but we can't because electricity is too high, it's gigavolt, and the energy is very, very much that no technology currently is available to capture that energy and store it and use it for our use later on. So it's just like a wasted energy. We look it, right? We saw energy being wasted. We can't extract it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to humble us, right? How much your knowledge you have in front of you, right in front of your eyes, you have that almost unlimited amount of energy that Allah supplies almost every day, striking, right? Singapore, if you average it out lah, right? Or the lightning between clouds, you can't even extract it. You can see, but you can't extract it. See, so that's how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to show us His power. So everything has been set actually in this universe in terms of energy. Now let's move on, right, to the moment of creation. You see, once you reach to that very slice of time, which is 10 to the power of minus 10 second, which is what, 0.000000, and you have a 10 billion zeros, and then you have one. That is the time, right, the very, very early part of the Big Bang, where scientists agreed that the energy particles were produced, photon, boson, and gluons, and produced. But you approach closer towards time zero, t is equals to zero, that is where scientists do not agree. Some scientists said it is like that, some scientists said it's like that, right? So they were still discussing on, they are still discussing on actually what actually happened in that as you approach closer to t is equal to 0. So for example, t is equal to 10 to the power of minus 11, 10 to the power of minus 12. You have between 0.000001, that 0 is 100 billion or 1 trillion zeros. So you're approaching a very, very close to the moment of creation. So what actually happened? Still a lot of discussion because the mathematics are not quite clear, right? And mathematics are based on scientists' theories and thinking on what did actually happen, right, before 10 to the power of minus 10 second. But it actually has to do with these four things, right? Sorry, three things, right? You have to understand, right, quantum mechanics. Once we understand what is quantum mechanics, then the second part, which is quantum fluctuation, will make sense to us. Once we understand what is quantum fluctuation, then we can understand what is Planck's time. Once we understand what is Planck's time, then we can understand what actually happened at t is equals to 0. Or is there t is equal to 0? What actually happened during that moment of creation, the Big Bang? Okay, so we have to go through these layers. So let's go to quantum mechanics first, like I inform you, right? No, if you follow my series of lectures, you're not just learning about or discovering on what Al-Quran says about creation itself, right? Because that, if you want me to say it, I can just cover in just one lecture, because I just say, oh, it's like this, it's finished. But to really understand it, we need to go further, and that's what my book's all about, right? So this is the platform to understand it. Previously, I delivered lecture. They said, okay, 1.5 hour, right, or just 2 hours. Expound on the creation of the universe based on the Quran and Hadith. So time very limited, so I gloss over many of those things. So I just zoom in on the big things. But now we are going to the small things. And this lecture, if you follow this lecture, inshallah, you will not just understand, right, the link between the moment of the scientific theory and what Al Quran says. You will also, and you have already, if you followed the previous lectures, you have understand about astronomy, about this universe at large, what it contains, and so forth. And you will also understand about physics, and you understand the modern theory of physics, which, yeah, even Albert Einstein cannot accept it. He understood it, but he cannot actually take it. He said there are some flaws, right, in that theory that cause it to be nonsensical. So he said, I cannot accept it. So he tried in vain, right, for the rest of his life, from when he was 40s to his death in his 60s, for almost 2 decades. He tried so many ways to falsify quantum mechanics because he could not agree on the basis of quantum mechanics. He said it's illogical. So he attempted, tried to disprove it, and tried to come out with what do you call it, the grand unified theory. He failed. Einstein failed. So towards the end of his life, he could not actually contribute uh, what he contributed when he was still young, right? When he contributed a lot of physical theories, that being cornerstone of modern physics. So what is actually quantum mechanics? It has to do with this phenomena. This phenomena is called the single slit and double slit experiment. Now, this is something you can observe, you can do it, right? Something is logical, but at the same time illogical. Now, if you have, let's say, a ray of light and you make a slit, right? And this ray will enter the slit, and you have a screen at the end of the slit, the end of the slit here, right? And you can see that most of the light, right, will accumulate at the center, just behind the slit. So this part will be the brightest. And then it will follow by a darkness here, and then another bright spot, and then dark and bright spot, and this bright, so this colored lighted part getting less and less visible until it becomes non-visible at all. So if you draw a graph which shows the intensity of the light itself, in the middle is very intense, it's very bright, but then after that it becomes what they call it, dark, suddenly dark, and then it brightens again, and then it darkens again, and then it gets brighter, but not as bright as before, and therefore the pattern continues until, right, it's complete darkness. So it's on both sides. This can be observed, right? But if you use laser, cannot use torchlight. You can use torchlight, but sometimes torchlight will not produce this beautiful pattern of light. This pattern, like how you want to explain this pattern, this pattern can only be explained if light is described as wave-like in nature. So you have a pattern of where the waves were strengthened, and then interference of the waves, so the waves cancel out each other. So you have a crest, you have a throw, so crest and a throw, right? So you have a crest and then you have a throw. So if you move the crest and the throw together, then you minus them both, so you have a flat line, right? So you have a crest and you have a throw, right? What you call interference is when these two parts merge together and cancel each other out, so you have a flat line. But then if you have a crest and a crest joined together, you have a double crest. So it's intensity of light. So this can only be explained if we consider light as wave-like. And that is why, right, scientists from 16th century, 7th century onwards, right to 19th century, they considered light as wave-like in nature because they can observe this experiment. Okay, so light is wave in nature. But then another strange phenomena we can observe is this, right? Light cannot bend. Light cannot bend. It means that if there is light coming here and you are standing right behind this wall, right, you cannot see light. I mean, you will not be lighted. You will still be in the dark. If you can see light, that is light reflected from the screen here. But light will not bend and then light you up. Will not light you up here, even if you stand just beside this slit. Now, that is because light travels in a straight line and light never curve, never bend. There is never a curved line, right? So light always travels a straight line, but at the same time, light is a wave. Okay, so that's another phenomenon for light. So light travels in a straight line. At the same time, light is a wave. Okay. Now, if you have a wave, this wave will not stop there, but this wave will extend all the way there, right? Just like you have a ripple, if you have a pond, and then you make a ripple on the surface of the pond, which was very still before that, then that ripple is circular in shape, and it will progressively getting bigger and bigger. The circle gets bigger and bigger, and then every part of that pond, right, will get affected by the wave. Will be bobbing up and down. So even if those point just behind, right, the point that you put your finger, you poke your finger onto the pond surface, right at the end, just behind your finger also, right, that part of pond will also be affected by wave. So wave is circular in nature. So if wave is circular in nature, and if you are standing here, then for sure you can see some light. You can see the light source here. You don't have to have the screen. Even let's say the screen is not there, but if you stand here, you can still see the light. If light is wave in nature. But light, you can't see the light. It means that light goes in a straight line, does not bend. But then how you explain the this thing that you can see on the screen itself? This thing can only be explained if light is a wave. But if light is a wave, then why can't you see the light if you are standing here? Just take another example, okay? We are at nighttime already. Why we are nighttime? Why we are in the dark? Because the earth is sphere, right? And therefore, we have moved away from the part that faces the sun. So moving towards the part of the earth that is away from the sun. And why is it dark? Because light from the sun cannot bend in and light us up. So it just goes straight there. right? So once we move behind the earth, the this side of the earth, everything gets dark because light cannot bend. So light moves in a straight line, but at the same time, light is a wave. Now, if it's light is a wave, then the night sky must always be bright. Because why? Because the light from the sun is wave light. So as it passed Earth, right, the ripples from the wave will encompasses the surface of the Earth on the other side, the night side, and so it's going to be as bright as daytime, if not as bright as daytime, but it's still bright lah. It's not going to be as dark like we can observe right now. So this is something that cannot be explained. Light moves in a straight line, but it does not display the properties of a wave, whereas light, if you stop it on the screen, right, and you produce pattern like this, then light is a wave, but then it does not fully fulfill the characteristics, the nature of wave. So something is wrong somewhere, either in our understanding or Allah creates light something that is difficult to understand, difficult to explain, or is something that is mysterious. Like now, before you start to thinking, oh, then a malaikat is also, created from light. So that's why malaikat is mysterious. Now, let me just clarify this thing. We are talking about physical light. We're not talking about metaphysical light, right? Malaikat, the angels, they are metaphysical beings. They are not physical beings. They are not, subjected to our physical universe. The proof is that they can just go up and meet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and they reside in a metaphysical universe, not in this universe, but they can also go into this physical universe, and malaikats are everywhere in this physical universe. In fact, there are hadith that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam says that this universe is so jam-packed with malaikat. Subhanallah. Jam-packed with malaikat. How is this universe, this vast universe, jam-packed with malaikat? It means that there are almost like infinite number of malaikats, uncountable number of malaikats, jam-packed. Imagine that. Like not even light can jam-pack this universe. Not even light, because there are patches of, not even patches, there are vast region of this universe that is dark. So therefore, right, malaikat is not created from our physical light. They were created or continuously being created by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from a metaphysical light, which the nature is, we do not know. What is that nature of that metaphysical light? We do not know. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not inform us. But light that can have shape. Imagine, our physical light in this universe cannot have shape. It is something that is shapeless. In fact, it is massless. It is mysterious, right? It can be wave, and but it does not fulfill the properties of wave. But angels created from light, but angels can, right, come in different form. And angels have wings in the metaphysical universe lah, not wings in this universe, right? So what type of wings? Don't think about it, because it's beyond our need to know. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala just tell us that the angels have wings, and there's it, full stop. So we believe in that. What is the function? We do not know, right? But the things that metaphysical light can change shape into a form of something that is physical for us. Why is physical for us? Because malaikat Jibril alayhi salam can appeared in front of Rasulullah SAW in a form of a human being that can be seen by other companions. When he or it can be seen, Malaikat Jibril can be seen by companions, it means that it blocks light and it reflects light. So it is a solid matter. That's why we can see, because light bounces off from our body to the observer's eye, and we can see other people because light bounces from that people, reflected from that people, and goes to our eye. If that person, that object absorbs light like a black hole, then we cannot see anything. It's completely dark, just like, the darkest color that has been created, just created by human beings. They call this as pentablack. An object that is being painted by this color pentablack is completely dark, as if it is not there at all. Why? Because when light, right, light fell on that pentablack object, painted by pentablack color, that pentablack color paint actually absorb the light and does not reflect the light back, and therefore we cannot see anything, because light is not being reflected from that surface to our eye, so it appears that is not there at all, right? So what we see is actually what Allah SWT has allowed light to enter our eyes. If Allah SWT does not allow that light to enter our eyes, we cannot see anything. So the companions could see Malaikat Jibril, because Malaikat Jibril appeared in a form that either blocked light, right, from behind it, or the surface of the form that Malaikat Jibril took reflected light from the sun or whatever source to the companions' eyes. So the companions could see, right, Malaikat Jibril. That is the metaphysical light, right? So do not always compare whatever physical light with the angels, and therefore do not make the mistake that some eager scientists, right, Muslim scientists in Pakistan made, right? The error they made is that they actually equated our light, which is traveling at 300, almost 300,000 kilometers a second, to the light that Allah SWT used to create malaikat. And therefore they say, oh, because of the Quran says, Allah says that malaikat went up to meet Allah SWT in 50,000 years and come down, and then, oh, 1,000 years, so they use a lot of equations, and said, then they said, oh, the conclusion is that malaikat travels in the speed of light, which is bonkers, right? Malaikat's limit is not being, malaikat's speed is not being limited by our physical universe speed limit. Why? Because malaikat go up and down. The malaikats all go up and down, in constant motion to Allah Subhanahu Wa Taala, and that distance is so far, is beyond our own physical universe. So if malaikat moves at the speed of light, then malaikat will take, even to reach Pluto will take about 8 hours. It's just solar system, right? Not going to the nearest star. The nearest star, it takes 4.5 years. So that is impossible for malaikat. Malaikat is moving around, right, very fast. So do not make such a mistake. Okay. Now, going back to this quantum mechanics, so they have this something that cannot be explained, right? Light behaves like a wave, but at the same time, it does not fulfill 100% the characteristics of wave. Okay. Now, then they have this a double slit experiment. What is double slit experiment? You see, if you have two slits, all right, then you must expect that the light at the end of each split here, okay, each, what do you call it, narrow slit, sorry, not split, narrow slit here will produce the greatest intensity of light. But then they found out that no, the most intense light is in the middle, whereas you have a slit in the middle. The slit is here and here. So by right, it should be this slit and this slit, right, that is most intense, most brightest. But then it is not. This is most brightest. So it means that light actually bends, and then it lighted up this part. But it also fulfills the characteristics of, what they call it, light as a wave. So this confirms, double slit experiment confirms that light behaves in wave-like. Because why you have a brightness in the middle? Because the interference of the two waves. Like I said, right? The two crests, if you have a wave like this, and then the wave meet together, they have a higher wave. So something like that. But then came this strange phenomena from this experiment. You have this double slit, okay? And then you have this pattern of light, okay? Now, let's say they said they release one particle of light, just one particle of light, photon. Now, this particle of light moves from the light source towards that what do you call it, surface where you have two slits. Now, if you let the two slits open, then that particle, one particle of light, and this is being done experimentally and it's being proven, this one particle of light somehow rather split open into two. That is something that cannot be explained. It split open into two, and both of them enter the slit. And once they enter the slit, then they combine back together to become one particle, and then they travel towards the screen, and then they light up the screen. Now, because that particle moves in a wave-like manner, right? So therefore, you have this pattern of interference of light. You have two screens. So that is something that cannot be explained. But if, let's say, you let the photon of light, right, escape from the light source, so it's traveling. As it travels, initially you have two slits open, right? As it travels, you close one slit. People done the experiment. You close one slit. So the photon, right, that is traveling needs to make a decision. Should I split or shouldn't I split? Then, because there's one slit only, that particle of one photon of light, this particle of light, remains as a particle and enters that slit. And then as it escapes that slit, it becomes one particle again, but then it displays a wave-like property. Now, if you close the other slit, right, as this particle of light moves and you close the other slit, then the particle of light makes the decision to move into that another slit, right, as a particle, not as a wave. It's only when you open up both slits, then the particle will split up into two, or it becomes wave-like in nature. They cannot be explained, right? They cannot be explained by logical thinking. It is as if that particle of light knew beforehand what you're going to do. Are you going to open both slits? If you're going to open both slits, I'm going to split to two. If you just open one slit, I will remain as a particle. And I will enter the slit that you open, left or right. I don't care which one you open, I will enter the particle, the slit that you open. So it is as if it is a thinking particle, right? And it knows beforehand. Now, let's say, right, you have already did this experiment before, the scientists, you release one particle of light, right? And when you release it, right, you close one slit. So only one slit open. Then you release that particle of light. Then that particle of light is moving towards that open slit. As it travels towards the open slit, you open up the other slit. So now you have two slits. Then that particle of light, before it reaches the two slits, suddenly, right, it somehow like broke up into two particles and enter both slits at the same time. And then after both of them enter slits at both time, and then you combine back to one particle as a wave-like nature and then light up the screen. Illogical. This is the basis of quantum mechanics, right? From this experiment, then the scientists, right, devised that theory, which they call as quantum mechanics. Quantum, why? Because from the word quanta. Quanta means a packet of energy, right? It is actually they use photon, so photon is like a packet of energy. Like I said just now, right? Energy, Allah SWT hid it in particles. So that particle is right, contains lots of energy. So quantum mechanics, quantum theory, it means that it just goes back to that particle itself, that quanta of energy, whether it splits or it becomes still remains as a particle. It depends on your decision, on the observer's decision. So the observer actually determine what is going to be the end result of that particle. That is why Einstein cannot accept it. He said, this is not how the world works, right? Something is wrong with that theory, right? The experiment, okay, we can explain. And sorry, the experiment is okay because everyone agrees upon, right, the result of the experiment, but the explanation, Einstein cannot accept. So he tried in vain to propose another theory, right, an alternative theory to that observation, but he couldn't. And quantum theory, right, being proposed by a number of scientists in the early 20th century, uh, it went from strength to strength. It means that what the scientists proposed with their calculations and equations actually not just can explain, right, this double slit experiment, but it actually, right, conform to everyday affairs, everyday matter. And we can see actually, right, the accuracy of quantum mechanics right in front of our eyes right now. How? Our computer, our handphone, right? All these things, right? If you want to go into electronics, right, or the movement of electrons and so forth, you have to go back to quantum mechanics. The basic underlying principle is quantum mechanics. So if quantum mechanics is wrong, then we will not have all these devices. But because we have all these devices, so we are seeing actually the proof of the accuracy of quantum mechanics. But it cannot be explained by logical mind. And that is why Niels Bohr, right, one of the founders of quantum mechanics, he famously said that, yes, quantum mechanics, right, is part of his contribution to explain, and yes, it's accurate, but he said, I don't like it at all, not one bit. And I regret my involvement in creating this theory or coming up with this theory with a group of other physicists. He created it because why? It is illogical. And he didn't like this theory, even though this theory is actually accurate, because it's the mind is simply cannot accept it. It is as if, right, the subatomic particles, right, actually knew what we're going to do as an observer. So they came up with this, what they call it, hypothetical, what they call it, scenario, where you have a cat inside a box. And what they call it, the scientist that came up with this hypothetical scenario, right, or experiment, his name is Heisenberg. Schrödinger, another German scientist, right? So Schrödinger came up with this thought experiment. He said, if you put a cat there, right, and the cat is alive, and then you release poisonous gas inside that box, right? According to quantum theory, you cannot guarantee that that cat has died. So that cat is actually in between two states, whether alive or dead, until you open up the box and you observe it. Then, whether that cat is alive or that cat is dead. If it's alive, then that poisonous gas is not strong enough to kill the cat lah. But it is in between life and death. You do not know the state itself. So it can be in two states. So this is the explanation which many scientists during that time cannot accept it and cannot really take it, right? So how can you explain that condition, whether it's life or death? Now, as a Muslim, what is our approach? How do we explain this thing? We learned in Islam about qada and qadar. We knew that everything has been predetermined by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Everything has been predetermined in Lawhil Mahfuz. Very, very early on, right? When Allah created Arash, and then Allah created Qalam and Lawhil Mahfuz, right? The recorder and the pen, what they call it. And then Allah commanded, right, these two creatures to jot down or to record everything that will happen from the moment of their creation right to the end of time, which is Yawmul Qiyamah. So everything has been predetermined, our age, everything, the movement of particles, this and that, everything does not escape Lawhul Mahfuz. According to Allah's infinite knowledge and according to Allah's infinite will, right? So that is the recording. And then when the time comes for the manifestation of this qadar and qadar, then it will happen according to the predetermined plan, the master plan already there, right? But it happened, right, through Allah's infinite power. So every moment, right, is within Allah's power, right, to materialize, to manifest that master plan. And Allah says in Surah Rahman, Kulla yawmin huwa fi sha'n. Every day, Allah is busy. Of course, that is something that a very simple language so that the Arabs back then can understand every day when Allah is busy. But it means that, it actually means that there is not a moment when Allah's power, right, is not being engaged to materialize, to manifest the master plan that Allah has constructed very early on according to Allah's infinite knowledge to what Allah wants with infinite Allah's will. What Allah wants, right, from Allah's infinite knowledge. So there are infinite options, and Allah choose one option. Infinite options, right? So let's say, for example, right, I talk, right? After I say this sentence, there are infinite options of what I will do. I will say A, I will say B, I will say C, I will say anything I want, or I just keep quiet. So there are infinite options. But Allah choose one option. Allah chose one option and record it inside the Lawhul Mahfuz. And you look at quantum mechanics. Quantum mechanics is just about options. It's about statistics. Statistically, it it will occur this way. So in quantum mechanics, there are a lot of options. This cat can be alive, can be dead, can be comatose, can be what? A lot of options. But for us, right, we do not know what are those options. I do not know what I'm going to see after this. You do not know what I'm going to see after this, because there are infinite options. But Allah has determined that I will say certain things. So I will use one option. So in quantum mechanics, you talk about quantum mechanics, right? There are a lot of options. You do not know which option actually happen until it happens, until you observe it, until you knew it, until you're cognizant of it. Then it becomes just one option. And the rest of those options, they were not there. Right? Of course, some scientists speculate it becomes this and that, or it happens in a multiverse universe, another universe, and that. Those are just speculations. But the reality is that there are so many options, right? But then it will only happen if there's an observer. It means that it only happen when you realize, you know what is happening. So after this, what I'm going to say, I do not know. You do not know, right? There are a lot of options. But then Allah has determined that Lawhul Mahfuz, that I will say what? I will say, we have reached towards the end of our lecture. So all other possibilities collapse, and only one possibility remains as per what Allah has determined in Lawhul Mahfuz. So the photon that travels, right? It travels as a particle, right? You do not know whether it will enter this slit or that slit, or will enter both slits at the same time. You do not know until you observe. Once you observe, you collapse all other possibilities, and only one possibility remains. And that possibility is the possibility that Allah has determined beforehand in Lawhul Mahfuz. So you talk about qadar and qadar, and you talk about quantum mechanics. Quantum mechanics actually prove of what we believe so far, that everything has been predetermined by Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala in Lawhul Mahfuz. Only that we do not know, right? The option only will materialize, will manifest itself when the time comes for it to appear according to Allah's will, and that thing will happen according to Allah's infinite power. Kulla yawmin huwa fi shan. Every single moment Allah is busy, means Allah's power is engaged in this physical world with Allah's creations, at least in this physical world. We cannot apply quantum mechanics to the metaphysical world because we do not know. We do not have any knowledge about that. Okay, so this is actually basically quantum mechanics, right? And that is why, right, those who are not Muslims, right, they find it very difficult to understand quantum, very difficult to accept it. But if you are Muslim, you can really accept it because why? Because this confirms to our actually our sixth article of faith, which is belief in qada and qadar. Okay, so I'm going to stop here. Next week, inshallah, we're going to move on to quantum fluctuation, which has to do with quantum mechanics, inshallah. Okay, wallahu alam bisawab. Let's see whether there are any questions or not. Very good question. Can we change our faith with effort and dua? Now, faith cannot be changed, right? But for us, right, from our own perspective, it is as if our faith has been changed. For example, I give you an example, right? We fall sick and we make dua to Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. Okay? We make dua to Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala so that we be cured as soon as possible. So Allah cured us. Do we change faith? No. The faith is that Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala will cure us at a specific time, at a specific place, according to our dua. And Allah is determined beforehand. Allah knows with Allah's infinite knowledge that we are going to make the dua. And because we make the dua, Allah SWT has determined beforehand the option that Allah will cure us. But then if we don't make the dua, right, and Allah knows beforehand that we're going to choose the option of not making the dua, then Allah will collapse all other options and will just retain the option that you will not recover soon enough because you don't make that dua. So the Prophet ﷺ said, "La yuradul qada illa al-qada." La yuradul qada illa bid-du'a, right? The fate cannot be changed except with dua. It means from our perspective. We think that our fate has been changed, but no, right? That fate has been sealed there, but we do not know, right? Our options for us still open because we make that decision, and therefore Allah Subhanahu wa Taala has Allah knew beforehand that we're going to make that decision, so Allah collapsed all other possibilities and retain just one possibility for us, and that is possibility that we actually want. Okay, so that is how you have to explain qada and qadar from what you call it quantum mechanics perspective. What about Higgs boson in the Quran? No, the Quran never mentions about Higgs boson. No, right? The Quran mentions about Allah's creations and how Allah's created this universe in 2 phases or in 2 days. And so that transition from the first phase to the second phase, according to my proposal in my thesis, it is because of the Higgs boson. The Higgs boson that caused that transition from the first phase to that phase. Now, what is that first phase and what is the second phase? Why is the role of Higgs boson in the transformation of first phase to second phase? That I will cover inshallah once we cover the what they call it quantum fluctuations and Planck times and Planck Planck time and Planck length, and then we move on to they call it the inflationary universe. When we talk about inflationary universe, then we're going to talk about Higgs boson inshallah. So there will be about 2-3 lectures in the future inshallah. Okay, so I think that's about it. No more question. Thank you very much. I'll see you inshallah. I cannot see you. You can see me. So you see me inshallah next week. So we end with Tasbih Kafara and Suratul Asr. Subhanallah. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Wal 'asri innal insana lafi khusr illa alladhina amanu wa 'amilus solihat wa tawasaw bil haqqi wa tawasaw bis sabr. Thank you very much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.